It's an honor for me to bring the First Responders Day Act forward for consideration. If this bill passes second reading today, I hope that we would all agree that we will bring it to third reading quickly and that it will receive royal assent in time for us to celebrate First Responders Day on May 1st of this coming year and every May 1st thereafter. Speaker, in the course of discussing my reasons for dedicating my private member's bill to the first responders of this province, I will be recognizing the many special guests who have joined us today to observe this debate. Every member of this legislature and members of the press gallery received a copy of this book entitled 911: True Tales of Courage and Compassion. I want to welcome the author, Valley Stone, who along with her family and friends is joining us in the Members West Gallery. Welcome. Welcome and thank you for the key role that you've played in bringing the First Responders Day Act to the floor of this legislature. Joining Ms. Stone from the East Gwillimbury Fire Department is Fire Chief Ken Beckett and Deputy Fire Chief Phil Dawson. For those who have read 911, you will know that Chief Beckett is one of those first responders who was willing to share some of his most memorable experiences on behalf of us all. I want to thank him for doing that. Perhaps more so than any other account in this book, Chief Beckett's description of a call to which he responded on March 8th in 1997 impressed on me the extent to which the first responders in our communities are exposed to human suffering and are called upon to put the lives of others first and must constantly struggle with subordinating their own personal feelings in the face of the tragedy that they have just encountered. Here is how Chief Beckett described that call. It was 10:30 a.m. on Mount Albert Road. The center median was covered with heavy, wet slush from the previous night's snowfall. A driver got sucked into a dense rut and came across the road, hitting my daughter-in-law, Kathy's car. My son, Tim, a firefighter at the same station, was off that day, helping his brother-in-law move, and my daughter was on her way to our house to bring us our two grandsons, Brian, age 2, and Kevin, age 5, for my wife to babysit while Kathy went to work. My pager went off, and I was debating whether I should attend with the rest of the crew when I received a phone call from a friend of mine suggesting that I should respond, as there had been a serious accident and he believed that my daughter-in-law was involved. There are no words to describe the fear that grips one's heart when it comes to a family call. Speaker, Chief Beckett goes on to describe how the children were airlifted to Sick Children's Hospital. Both were in a coma. 2-year-old Brian tragically succumbed to his injuries. His brother would eventually survive. And he describes how one of the most difficult challenges in the job is dealing with a death, and especially the death that involves a family member or a friend. Chief Beckett, we want to thank you for sharing that very personal experience with us, and through you, we also want to express our sincere appreciation to the men and women who put themselves in harm's way every day to carry out their professional calling as first responders. Also joining us today is Fire Chief John Lynn from the City of Barrie. And I want to acknowledge Fire Chief Jeff McCormick from the Brantford Fire Department, and from the Goderich Fire Department we welcome firefighter Dale Beekler. Speaker, today we have an opportunity to honor the men and women who are serving on our front lines as emergency responders in our province every day by passing a bill that will set aside a special day of recognition for all first responders. Also in the Members' Gallery from the York Region Police Services, I'm pleased to welcome Inspector Angelo De Lorenzi and Constable Ken Golding. From the Toronto Police Services, we welcome Acting Deputy Chief Tom Russell, Tactical Training Constable Derek Gooby, and Police Officer Brent Pilkey. They're joined by Mr. David McFadden, the President of the Police Association of Ontario. Speaker, we know all too well that the men and women of our police services never know what their day will bring, and we can't begin to imagine the emotions of their families every day, wondering what will happen, and will their spouse or their father return home safely. In his contribution to the 911 book, Joseph Sosik, a constable with the York Regional Police Service, put it this way, and I quote, "As police officers, we are always putting our lives on the line for the sake of public safety. I do not consider my life as important as that of my partner or civilians. It could be my military background, but even if I get injured or lose my life, I know I did it because it was my choice to take this job. For me, it's more important to save someone, even if it means that I might never make it home." Constable Sosik's comments are not empty words, Speaker. These men and women risk their lives to protect ours on a daily basis, and we cannot take that for granted. But we don't just want to wait to express our gratitude at a memorial. That's why we have before us this bill that will designate every May 1st as First Responders Day. The intention is that whether it's through statements here in this legislature or recognitions in municipal offices across the province or tributes in school auditoriums, that we would take the time every May 1st to acknowledge that our communities are safe, our homes are protected, and our lives are secure because of the dedication of the first responders in our province. I want to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Paul Charbonneau, past president of the Ontario Association of Paramedic Chiefs, and from the Toronto Paramedic Association, President Jeff McBride, and paramedics Don Michael and Judy Belanger. And again, I want to thank Judy for her insight into the world of paramedics through her contribution in this book. I also want to thank Ken Horton from the Toronto EMS and his colleagues who are here today. I want to thank you for your expression of support for this bill. Speaker, to underscore the impact of paramedics in our lives, here is a letter that was sent to Orange, our province's air ambulance service, this past summer from the mother of a 2-year-old boy. I want to read it into the record in support of the frontline paramedics, pilots, and dispatchers at Orange and in celebration of the work that they do. The letter reads as follows. "I would ask that you pass along this message to the Orange team, including Dennis and Dan, who airlifted our son to Sick Kids in July. Our son Brendan was brought into hospital about 8:30 a.m. by ambulance after a near-drowning incident at our family camp. He was stabilized by the ER team and then airlifted to Sick Kids by Orange paramedics Dennis and Dan. I wanted to let Dennis and Dan and the pilots, I didn't catch their names, I wanted to let them know that Brendan was discharged on Sunday and we are now at home. He is back to his wonderful self-laughing and smiling and up to 2-year-old antics. He is truly a miracle. As per MRI and neurology, no brain injury is suspected. I remember being so amazed by the professionalism and competence of our Orange team. I couldn't have asked for better people to literally have our son's life in their hands. We credit his amazing recovery to the top-notch care he received at all stages of this ordeal. We have our little boy back because of you." And Speaker, there are stories like these every day that go unnoticed and unrecognized. We want to thank and honor the paramedics, the pilots, the dispatchers at Orange, the paramedics right across this province who carry out their duty every day on our behalf. And it is because of them that we have the security that we do. Speaker, I also want to acknowledge Mr. John Saunders, the President of the International Association of Emergency Managers. In fact, it's Mr. Saunders who is responsible for the term emergency managers being included in the definition of first responders in this bill. I also want to thank him for affirming that May 1st is in fact an appropriate designated day in this province. And the reason is that May, the first week in May, is National Emergency Preparedness Week. Mr. Saunders is joined by the President of the Ontario Association of Emergency Managers, Mr. Rob McDonald. I also want to thank Denise Stone, the Community Emergency Management Coordinator for the region of Niagara, for joining us today. A special welcome to Councillor Jim Fobister from the City of Sarnia. And last but not least, I want to acknowledge from my hometown of Aurora, our Manager of Special Projects, Mr. Jim Kyle, and representing York Region St. John Ambulance, and the many volunteers of that great organization across the province, Russell Walter. Speaker, a few weeks ago, this book I found on my desk. I opened it up. Inside was a note that said, "Frank, thought you would like to review this before I call on Friday in regards to the private bill for first responders. Thank you, Valley Stone." I read the book. And after reading the book, I realized that we have a responsibility in this province to honor and recognize the men and women who have dedicated their lives to serving us on the front lines in the various capacity of first responders. Speaker, there are some 34 accounts of first responders in this book who have given us an insight into what their day is like. I highly recommend that we all read it. I highly recommend to the public that they do, because I believe they will see in a very different light the work that the first responders do in this province. These are ordinary people who carry out extraordinary feats every day. They deserve to be honored by having this bill passed today, so that every year, on May 1st, we would take the time to recognize the incredible work that these amazing people within our communities carry out for us selflessly every day. Thank you, Speaker.
The member for Newmarket Aurora, you have 2 minutes to reply.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm going to do something different with my 2 minutes. I want to thank all of my colleagues who spoke in support of this bill. I would ask all of the first responders in the House today to please stand, if you would. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to join me in an ovation to thank you for what you do. And I'd like to ask Valley Stone if she would stand. I thank you for your initiative of this book and for giving us a tremendous insight into the work of first responders. Thank you. And now, Speaker, I will leave it to this House to determine what the next steps are. I would like the bill referred to the Committee on General Government. My preference would be that we skip the vote and just go directly to committee. Of course we can't do that, but you know, you can always try. I've enjoyed very much the process of, first of all, contemplating what our first responders do. And then I again want to thank everyone for coming, because your encouragement, I know everyone's busy. And so the fact that you've taken the time to be here today to express your support, and through you, your colleagues' support, is sincerely appreciated. God bless you in what you do, and we look forward to celebrating you in a very special way every May 1st, every year, starting this coming May 1st. God bless you.